Hi everybody, happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Tablas Creek weekly live Instagram chat. I'm Jason Haas, partner and general manager here. So as I typically do while we're waiting for people to join, I wanted to give you a little bit of a visual tour of what's going on at the vineyard right now. So I'm going to pull up some pictures. It is starting to look a little more like summer, a little less like spring. Give you a little sense. Here is a vineyard block, the extreme western edge of the property. You can see that we've mowed every other row. You can see it's starting to turn gold, and the vines themselves are looking bushier and a little fuller. Something that gives you a little more perspective. Again, this is the very, very western edge of the very western piece. This is looking down through a Syrah block, down to one of our frost fans that we have actually not had to turn on at all this year, which is amazing. I feel very lucky for that. Still got lots of wildflowers in the vineyard. Super pretty. This is in a Claret Blanche block. We are still at the stage where we see lots of flower clusters, but no flowers yet. We're not far off. I've seen some other local neighbors say that they've gotten flowering, but we have not, as far as I can tell. But it's getting close. This is Grenache Blanc. We're still trying to regulate the growth. That means a lot of shoot thinning. And that's basically trying to get rid of some of the lateral shoots and turn what is a three-dimensional plant into something that's a little more two-dimensional, so that light and air can flow through. Reduces your pressures for mildew and the amount you need to intervene a little later in the season. Also kind of evens out the number of clusters per vine, which gives you a little more even growing. The head train blocks, we have been working to get, those are hard to get into later in the season because the vines themselves sprawl on the ground and you can't get a tractor through, so it's important to get the weeds there cleaned up early. So this is a Tanat block. And you can see we went through here once already. This is a second pass through to get things cleaned up after the late rain that we got. You can also see in the background one of the blocks that we're regenerating. This is a block that was originally planted to Viognier because we thought it would do well in a cool pocket of the vineyard, but we realized that it's actually in a frost zone, so Viognier, which sprouts early, turned out not to be a good choice, so we grafted it to Mourvèdre. But the vines themselves were never that strong. We'd lost a lot of vines. It was hard to fill in. So we pulled everything out a couple of years ago. We've been letting it lie fallow, and the plan is to get that planted again a little later this spring. We have, as those of you who know who've been here, we have a ton of fruit trees interplanted among the vineyard. This is one of the apple trees that's in the middle of a Mourvèdre block. You can see it's flowering. Super pretty out there right now. That part still feels like spring, even if the vineyard looks a little more like summer. And then something I realized I hadn't shown you yet. I want to show you a close-up of our soils. This was a shot that I got in the middle of that Mourvèdre block. This is some of that fractured calcareous stuff. It's sort of halfway between clay and limestone. It is porous. It absorbs the water that we get in the winter, and it holds it for the vines. It also provides a basic environment, opposite of acidic, which helps regulate the nutrient uptake of the vines. And it also helps displace potassium. All the calcium in there displaces potassium, which is one of the things that grapevines use to break down acidity. So as grapes ripen, they start with a ton of acid, and then that acid goes down as the growing season goes on. And one of the things you want to do is preserve that acidity to keep freshness in your wine. And this calcareous soil is one of the real secrets we have for doing that. It's one of the main reasons why we are where we are here in the hills of West Paso Robles. Okay, that's my vineyard tour for today. I'm excited with the guest that I have. Tommy Oldre, many of you will know him because he was our national sales manager at Tablas Creek for 7 years. And he spent the last 8 years working for Vineyard Brands. So I'm going to invite him to join me on this. And for those of you who don't know Vineyard Brands, it's the importing company that my dad founded that that represents us nationally. Hey, Tommy.
How you doing? How's it going?
Going great.
Good.
So I was just telling people a little bit about Vineyard Brands. How do you, when people ask you what Vineyard Brands is and is all about, how do you explain it?
Basically just wine import and distribution, and that, my job is to work with our distributors on a regional level. So basically that, we bring the wine in from various parts of the world and then work with our distribution network in various parts of the country to help sell more wine, basically.
So what parts of the world, what are the big parts of the world for Vineyard Brands?
It's still largely France. I think that probably about 69% of what we do still comes from France. And then a good chunk from Spain with Marcus de Caceres. And then we have New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Argentina, a little bit from Germany. So really kind of all over the world.
And so for the people who don't know, this is a company that my dad founded back in, well, it had various incarnations. I think it was officially incorporated in 1973. But it started mostly with wines from Burgundy. And a lot of those producers are still part of the Vineyard Brands portfolio. Some of the things that I was lucky enough to grow up with, the Monjards and Gouges and Sauzets and Pulsos and people like that. One of the important things, I think, that the decision that he made, which still carries through into what Vineyard Brands is today, even though he's been retired, he was retired from Vineyard Brands in the mid-90s, is that balance between estates, the vineyards, and the brands. You think of some of the brands that Vineyard Brands is famous for having kind of built and represented. You mentioned Marcus de Caceres, obviously the Perrin family, La Vieille Ferme, Famille Perrin, those sorts of things. And I think it's interesting and important that Vineyard Brands continues to try to maintain that balance between those two pieces of the portfolio.
More so now than ever. And it's not lost on me that, thankfully that your father and the Perrin family had the foresight that they did 50 years ago to begin with brands like La Vieille Ferme and Marcus de Caceres. Because in current times where we've lost hotels and restaurants and bars, and it's essentially 100% retail out there right now, it's good. I mean, it's critically important to have brands that are known and trusted and have been around for so long.
Right, because I've been reading that kind of retail distribution, at least kind of grocery store, the kinds of people that sign up with Nielsen, that's up, what, like 20%-ish since stay-at-home orders?
Yeah, I mean, it's up considerably, correct. Yeah, I don't have the exact number, but I mean, it's keeping the lights on,
Right.
Yeah.
At the same time that restaurant sales are down like 95%. So,
exactly. Yeah.
I know that's something that we're dealing with at Tablas, is that we've always focused on restaurant and independent retail in our distribution business. So we're grateful that Vineyard Brands does have the reach that it does in the retail world.
I think more than anything, it's really kind of driven home how important balance is in terms of your portfolio, your distribution, and we're able to navigate okay right now. Nothing's great out there, but we're hanging tough.
Right. Cool. Okay, I'm guessing that a lot of the Tablas Creek people who are watching here, who know you, probably know you from your time here. So, talk a little bit about how that happened, how that got started, and what you did while you were here.
Yeah. So, in 2003, basically, the girlfriend that I was with at the time, she didn't want to live in Brooklyn, and it's a true story, but I was like, look, if you can find a job, she had just become a Bikram yoga teacher. I was like, if you can find a job teaching Bikram yoga someplace, like, if it's close to the ocean and, near wine country, I'll move. Like, I had worked at a wine shop in college, and I still was kind of curious about, getting into the business. But I also kind of felt like I bought myself, 6 months to sell her on Brooklyn. And I think it was like literally the next day I got home from work, and she called and she's like, I got a job in San Luis Obispo, and I was like, that backfired, like it did not work at all. So yeah, in September of 2003, we drove from New York out to California. I remember I had no idea what I was getting into. Like I just worked at an ad agency in New York, and I showed up to Tablas Creek in a suit for an interview with you, right? Because I just didn't know. And I was like, okay, so the vibe out here is clearly different. It's a bit more relaxed. And then I think I was like employee number 3 or 4 in the tasting room. And we would have, at that point, it was, that one old limestone table. It would be like myself and one other person on the weekends. And you might be busy the whole day, right? But there was lulls. I remember throwing the ball with your dog for hours on end sometimes just because it was kind of quiet and nobody was coming out our way.
I remember one of that first year that we opened the tasting room, there was a weekend where Carol Ann, who was our first tasting room manager, had a wedding to go to. And so Megan and I, that's my wife Megan, for people who don't know, ran the tasting room. It was just the 2 of us on a Sunday. And we had 2 cars driving in the gate the whole time. We were super excited. We signed them both up for the wine club. But was a different time. 17 years ago in Paso Robles.
Yeah, no, it was, it was great. It was, I feel lucky. Like, I feel like I caught Paso at a really kind of neat point where it, kind of grew considerably quickly in that kind of like 2003 to 2012 era.
Yeah.
And I feel, kind of equally lucky moving to Denver at that time. I feel like Denver's had a really cool kind of growth period in terms of, restaurants and just kind of the food and wine IQ out here. I feel like has really grown considerably in the last decade.
Right. So you are now, you're based in Denver, and your territory covers a handful of states. You want to talk a little bit about what those states are, what the markets are?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it's really, we've grown considerably since I've been at Vineyard Brands. So, when I first moved out here, I just had 3 states, and then within 2 years, I was up to 6 or 7 states, kind of on the west. And then, as we've grown, we've added more people, and so we could be a bit more focused in each, kind of part of the country. So at this point, I do Colorado, which has grown considerably, in my time at Vineyard Brands, and then Arizona and Wyoming. And there's great balance in those states. Wyoming's pretty unique. It's kind of a semi-control state where the state government kind of functions as the distributor, and there's not a lot of people up there, so it's not as dynamic, but since I've been calling on it for 8 years, like I've got a lot of good friends up there, so it's a great visit for me. And then Arizona, I grew up there, so it's kind of nice to get back and work a market that, I've known for a long time and connect with some family and see some old friends. And we've got a great distributor partner down there too. So they're, really enjoyable to work with. And then Colorado, Vineyard Brands has been with this distributor here in Colorado for, upwards of 20 years. It's a great, we've got a great team up here in Brandon, and it's been a second family of sorts for the last 8 years, Great people, we're all really tight, and keep it fun.
Cool. Awesome. That's great. I see the Grand Vin is watching this.
Yeah.
I don't know who is in charge there, but they just waved at us. So,
yeah. Oh, perfect.
Hi. Okay, so I promised people in a Twitter thing this morning that I'd make you tell the story of your first day coming to work.
Oh, yeah. So I think it was actually my second day, but either like the first or the second day. But yeah, so I was pulling into the parking lot, and one of the vineyard dogs that was actually like one of my favorite animals of all time, Bubba, was taking a nap in like a shadow and not easily seen. And literally my second day, I think, on the job at Tablas Creek, I clipped Bubba's leg driving in, and I heard a yelp, and I got incredibly scared, and I went and chased after Bubba, and he was hiding under another truck and just kind of looking at me like, why would you do that to me, right? Like, and then it dawned on me like, man, I have to go find Neil and let him know I'm really sorry, but I think I just accidentally hit your dog in the leg, right? Like with my car. And I was like, well, this was the fun job, right? Like there goes that, like day 2. But Bubba eventually forgave me, and yeah, I joke that like I was kind of like the employee equivalent of Bubba, like the vineyard dog, right? Like the story with Bubba was he just kind of showed up one day, and you guys were like, "Well, he's not leaving. I guess he's here," right? Like,
yeah, he was a vineyard dog who adopted us. Like, we're like, it doesn't seem to belong to anybody else. Doesn't want to leave. He's a sweet dog. Yeah, okay. Guess we got another vineyard dog.
yeah, and I was probably the guy that just like showed up in the tasting room day after day, and I'm like, I guess he thinks he works here, right? Like.
And then you did some work in the cellar, and some harvest in the cellar here. And,
yeah, I mean, so I kind of worked, thankfully, like Tablas was small enough where like that was still kind of possible, right? Like, I remember just asking, Neil and Ryan at the time if I could kind of join things in the cellar for a little bit, and went in there kind of half-time the first year, and then, I think it was like 04, 05, 06 were the harvest that I got to work, which was awesome. And then there's a couple of years there where I kind of had the world's best gig, right? Like 50% of my time in the cellar, 50% of my time on the road, and it was awesome. Like I loved every bit of it. And then I think you and Neil just kind of had a conversation where like, well, this kind of works, but only for him, right? Like not really for you, not really for him. So
the challenge is that, of course, the most important time to be out in the market is September and October, which also happens to be harvest.
Totally.
So, yeah, that's always one of my challenges too.
And it was compounded too. I think was it 2005? You and Megan had Eli, right? So you weren't out and in the market or as available as much to be in the market at that point. So yeah, I mean that's. I think after that was kind of was like, all right, like Tommy, like you need to pick one, and we kind of think you're better at one than the other, right? Like,
we really do need your help.
Right. So yeah, no, but I loved it, and it was invaluable to spend that much time kind of in the cellar and just getting to learn things from that side of things as well.
Yeah, it makes you a more compelling and more knowledgeable advocate for the wines out in the market, and I'm sure that's still true.
Definitely, and I miss it. Like it was fun to be a part of, and there's a camaraderie in there. Kind of harvest and cleaning stuff till late at night and listening to the Clash. Like those are good memories for sure.
And one thing, I think you say that was true in that era. It's still true, honestly. You think. Amanda, who started in our tasting room, she just joined the cellar a couple of years ago. So that's still the source. People call me up and ask me, like, what's the best way to get into the wine business? And my answer is always get a toehold, take a job someplace that you think you might want to work, and give them a chance to get to know you. Because, I know we always want to bring people who we know up into new positions, and I think it's good advice.
No, definitely. It's the luck that in looking back, right? Like I knew of Tablas Creek and I knew of the wines and I knew of the connection. But when I think about the culture I was able to spend so much time in and around, like I just consider myself lucky. It was so great. And, to still keep in contact with you and a lot of the people there that are still there, like it's incredible. It's now almost 8 years to the day that, I left Tablas and joined Vineyard Brands, and there's still so many people at Tablas Creek that, I worked with way back then. And even it's, one or two that have returned that went away for a little while and came back.
Yeah, it's one of the things that was a real signature of all of the companies that my dad founded, is that people go and people stay, because it's a culture that rewards that. So something I'm proud to keep going with.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think we should answer some of the questions that people sent in.
Okay.
First one: what excites you most about the last 30 years of Tablas Creek, and what are you most looking forward to about the next 10 years of Tablas Creek?
What excites me most? Just how incredible the progression has been. I feel like Tablas has always done the right thing the right way, and as Tablas has grown and as we've learned more, as Tablas has learned more and as we've learned more about whether it's agriculture or, just kind of the wine business itself, I feel like Tablas always does such a great job of being at the forefront of things. This new regenerative organic certification that you guys recently acquired, I just find so incredibly cool. And I remember kind of how proud I was to work for a place that was farming organically in 2003, and then started to pursue biodynamics and whatever that was, 2008 or 9 or whatever.
Right.
And I love the fact that, Tablas is an established name at this point, and that I feel like, having been around it since 2003, it's just neat to see that progression. And as far as the next 10 years, I just get so pumped on the different grape varieties that are coming out. It's fun to taste varietal Picardin and Tre Noir. And then, the characters, right? I think it's great that Neil's still around. I think it's cool that, his children, or that Austin is as involved as he is. And I think sometimes I get a little jealous because I'm like, man, it's firing on all cylinders back there, right? The culture in the cellar and in the vineyard it's enviable. It just seems like, people are really good at what they do and they really enjoy doing it. And it's just neat to see. So I think it's just going to be really cool to see how this great group of talent takes things going forward.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, we're going to be bottling our first ever Bourboulon next month, which
so cool.
I think that's amazing. It's
Totally.
one of the things that gets me really excited. Okay, cool. The Grand Vin folks asked, which monovarietal wine or grape that Tablas makes and grows do you find the most intriguing, and why?
Yeah, so I guess I've always been kind of particular to Counoise, just because it was like the original super unique kind of odd grape variety that I was familiar with at Tablas Creek. Like when we started doing single varietal Counoise, it was pretty unique back in the time. And I was also kind of impressed with how it would vary so much. Like certain years it would barely have more color than the rosé, and then other years it would come off, a little bit darker than Grenache, it seemed like. And I guess more than anything, I just appreciate its kind of punchy character, right? You can argue that's probably not the world's most intellectual grape variety, and I can relate to that a little bit. So I've always just kind of enjoyed its approachability, if you will.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Joel Peterson asks, Lute Olson or Sean Miller?
Lute Olson. Let's get serious, right? He brought it home. It was great. That's one of the highlights of the last 8 weeks was one Saturday CBS replayed that 1997 championship game. So it brought back great memories of going to U of A and sitting in the fraternity house and watching that game with a ton of friends, right? And I miss Joel. I know he's the mayor of Paso now. But please give him and his family my best. They're great people.
Cool. Megan asks, are you so sad that a tennis ranch opened here just after you moved away?
It honestly blows me away, right? It was, I guess it's just fitting. That's the way things work for me, right? It probably, I had to leave for that to open, I guess is probably the way it worked. But the good news is I've got a buddy that still teaches over there. So the couple times I've come back to Paso, I can bring sticks and get out on those courts. They did a really nice job. And I'm psyched that, that exists in North County. It's just, I hope, you and all your friends, continue to at least have your children give tennis a try, just because it's a cool facility. It's a great sport. And, I get, now that I'm in Colorado, which is awesome, and it's been one of the best surprises about living in Denver is the tennis community up here is incredible. But we have a winter at the same time. So,
yes, you do.
Yeah, I'm jealous of those North County winters where you can get out all the time, for sure.
Yeah, Eli decided, really to our surprise, to join the tennis team as a freshman this year. So,
awesome. I told you this before.
It's happening.
The coolest thing about tennis is the ease for me to enjoy it at this point in my life, right? One other person, global pandemics aside, it's, very easy to enjoy tennis.
One of the questions I had for you, so where do you turn? What's a region that people might not be on people's radars that you turn to for interesting stuff, excitement, good value?
Yeah. guess I still kind of turn all over the place. You know, I guess what's funny, Jason, is when I lived in California for those 8 years, I didn't really drink a ton of California wine. You know what I mean? I kind of, not that I got like tired of it or fried on it, but I think probably because we were a little bit limited in our neck of the woods in the Central Coast in terms of the bounty of exports that you saw in LA or San Francisco. Like, that's really what I pursued. And I'm around so much great wine with the company that I work for and with, you know, the group of friends that I have from this business. But I find myself at this point really kind of being attracted to a lot of the cool stuff that's happening in California. I feel like there's a lot of kind of youth and interesting producers coming out of California, and I'm not as close to it anymore, so it takes a little bit more effort for me to try and stay on top of. And it gives me an opportunity to kind of chat with local wine shops about stuff that they're digging from California. And then outside of that, I mean, you know, there's still so much great value that you can find, in my opinion, from France and Portugal. You know, South Africa, when people kind of open up their opinions a little bit and give it a second and a third look. There's a ton of cool stuff coming from South Africa, in my opinion. And you know, I guess I just kind of learned to not write off anything and just to kind of keep an open mind and keep trying stuff. You know.
Cool. Are there wines that you have? I mean, I know there's like 4 or 5 wines that I have on my list that I will buy every year, just because it's something that I know I like. I want to have it around the house. I want to see how it is year to year. Do you have wines like that, or are you more like you always looking for something different?
More always looking for something different, right? Like I feel like, you know, that is kind of the evolution of things for me. Is I mean, there's stuff that I'm always going to enjoy and appreciate, but there's so many more players in the game these days, whether that's on the import side or what have you, that I think I'm always kind of not just moving on, but just kind of curious to see what's going on in various parts of the world and with various importers and who's doing what, basically.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. What else? You warned me that you might have some questions for me. What's the...
No, you know, I was trying to think about it, but like, you know, you and I still talk a fair amount, I guess, right? But like, you know, you're coming up on 20 years in Paso, you know, like, and working at the vineyard and what have you. I guess, you know, like, have you ever stopped to think, like, are there things that you just never thought would be a part of your life that are currently, like when you moved out there in 2002, like in terms of the Paso Robles wine scene or Tablas Creek in general? Like, are there things that most surprise you about how they've developed over the last 18, 20 years?
So, the thing that I always feel like was kind of a surprise and a happy surprise is how great this Paso community turned out to be and how much a part of it we want to be.
Yeah.
I think when we got started, I mean, I think both literally and metaphorically, we were outside of the boundaries of Paso Robles. So, I mean, the property that we bought was, we didn't know it, but it was about 3 miles west of the western edge of the Paso Robles AVA at the time. We were doing grown varieties, which nobody was doing here. We were farming organically, which nobody was doing here. We were looking to dry farm and use native yeasts and all of these things that at the time were just so far out of the mainstream that we felt a lot like we were on our own.
Yeah.
That's really not true anymore. I mean, there's a crazy cool Rhone community here in Paso Robles. I think a lot of the most innovative farming stuff in the Central Coast is happening here. I mean, we hosted a couple of seminars on dry farming last year and had 40, 50 people come to be like, yeah, we're going to try this. So I think that's been amazing. I was thinking that we would have to kind of go our own way more than it's turned out we've had to. Instead, I feel like I spend a lot of my time working in conjunction with the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance or with Rhone Rangers or with the other groups that have kind of grown up around the same sorts of things that we work on. And that's been super cool. When we moved out here from Washington, D.C., and we were, I mean, not that we were city kids. I grew up in the country in Vermont, but to be a part of a community in this town and to realize that there's so much richness here is It's been great.
Yeah. No, I can see that. It's interesting. I felt like you guys arrived right when there was a comparably aged generation of like longtime Paso families that it all worked really well, right? Like within our industry, there were a lot of other couples and people your age and our age, and it seemed like just a good time to land in Paso.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay. I got one more question for you. We're up on half an hour, which is usually what I try to keep these to. But
Perfect.
so Craig asked, what's your favorite Tablas Creek memory? Your time here.
Also really difficult. I don't know if it's my favorite memories. I guess, what I miss is everything, right? Like I told you earlier last week, but I miss hanging out with you and Neil and all the people at Tablas that are still around, and kind of like the Tablas family. I really miss like what I'm seeing behind you right now, right? Like gorgeous Central Coast, Paso Robles, California weather. One of the most kind of like distinct memories I have is, honestly, I'll never forget what it feels and sounds like to be standing in a cellar when a 6.5 earthquake kind of comes through your neck of the woods. It's not my favorite memory, but it stands out. There was nothing rolling about what we experienced at the vineyard. It was like a train coming through, like on top of that limestone. It was just louder than I ever imagined. And I remember everyone making fun of me, like every time like the UPS truck got too close to the building, like I was halfway to town running, like that was a very singular memory I have from kind of my early days at Tablas, for sure.
For those people who don't know, this was 2003, just before Christmas. It was like the 22nd or 23rd of December. I was on the East Coast. We were visiting Megan's family in Baltimore. And I guess my dad was in Vermont and on the phone to Neil, who was in the lab. And our communication was him talking to Neil and Neil saying, "Oh, we're having an earthquake. Oh, it's a big one." At which point the phones cut out. Then we couldn't get any information for like whatever, an hour or two.
Yeah.
But I'm always grateful that like we emerged from it relatively unscathed. Lost like 1,000 cases worth of wine and barrel, but nobody was hurt, and the building was undamaged, and feel lucky.
Very lucky, very lucky. It was just just something I'll always remember. And
you got your wind sprints in for the day.
Got my wind sprints in for the day, and it was and you just remember that because it was significant, and then the other things are just, I pulled the wrong clamp in the winery one time, and I had to it was on a 3,000 gallon tank, and it just came squirting out, and I had to use my stomach to kind of like plug the hole, and then I couldn't reach the clamp, and like that sheepish feeling of kind of like yelling for help, right? Like, and then having somebody turn the corner, like figure out what's going on, and just shake their head at you, like.
Everybody's done it. All of us who've worked in a cellar have done it at one point or another.
Yeah. But and then you just miss, I remember a lot of the good times, and that's awesome.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for taking the time to join this today, and thanks for your work and your advocacy out in the market. It's great that even though you left here 8 years ago, I still have an excuse to give you a call every week or two.
No, totally. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and thanks for everything in general.
Of course. Okay, so thanks everybody who joined us today. Reminder that we do this every Wednesday at noon. We also do a live broadcast that Neil hosts, tasting of some wines every Friday at 5 o'clock Pacific. We have all of our upcoming live events, including some that we are now scheduling with wine shops and wine bars and restaurants around the country. So I'm virtually going to events in Chicago and San Francisco and Florida and DC over the next couple of weeks. So those are all on the events page of our website. We're still at least a few weeks out from being able to reopen our tasting room. So look for more of these sorts of virtual events. And thanks for sticking with us and being a part of this. So again, thanks everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. And bye, Tommy.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.